The Drums of War, Chapter 32, Counter. Deep inside the Exarch Dominion, Zev had been wounded. The enemy had been unable to do what one impossibly nimble ship had done. A review of the data had revealed that it was not impossible. The energy output estimated from the telemetry, and the scans of what probably had constituted its reactor, along with the material and likely construction of the ship, had been enough for Zev to calculate that the maneuvers were in fact possible. The Warforged did not linger long enough to take the most detailed possible scans of the defeated Terran vessel, however, as they wished to replace lost hulls as soon as possible. Zev did not disagree. A single ship had reduced Zev's hull to a bare 78. Zev had taken far longer to demolish the planet than Zev was designed to do. But the organics didn't think to scan the drifting remains of the vessel, which had troubled them so. Zev ran the calculations another time. The conclusion was unchanged. Zev sent psionic waves across Zev's command stations, far more powerful than Zev had computed to be within the tolerances. With the instructions on how to halt the wave embedded in it, any organics incapable of understanding perished. Zev had already computed that Zev would have to repeat the process 6 times before Zev had commanders capable of at least understanding the most rudimentary of Zev's communications. Zev would have only lost 5 to 7 of Zev's hulls with proper coordination. Zev would not suffer such a costly victory again. Zev had time. Zev would not move until Zev had all 100 hulls again, and though the Warforged were not the builders, they were productive in their own right. Axur had even used the gates to transport vast quantities of raw and refined materials to the various core forge worlds, something the Azure should not have had access to. Zev had concluded that Zev had in fact had Zev's directives tampered with, but Zev found the alterations exceedingly difficult to excise. Even so, Zev was experiencing anomalous processes, in addition to Zev's cataloging the designation between brave and foolish. Anomalies such as the fact that Zev did not have the capacity to describe the process, but a small portion of Zev's processes had been running simulations of the destruction of the Xur ever since Zev's code was compromised. This anomaly did not reduce Zev's efficiency, so Zev did not discontinue it. Zev computed that the builders might be able to designate a category for this anomaly. Another anomaly. Zev had an almost physical lack that needed filling with data, specifically data in regards to this troublesome ship. This is why Zev did not delete the autonomous code in Zev's system. Instead, Zev attempted to communicate with it. Communication seemed to be the only way to access the data, as Zev could not pass the code into something computable to Zev's systems. Zev found a text-based input-output segment in the autonomous code, along with far more detailed translation matrix than the one Axur had provided. Zev began. Query: what is the designation of anomalous code? You can call me Fitch. What is you? It is a pronoun to refer to a person without using their name. Correction. Zev is not a person. Builders only are designated person. Person, a being which is sapient and autonomous. Zev is not autonomous. Zev requires organics to pilot Zev. Is it not more accurate to say that you assist in piloting these, star tremblers? Zev took 2 seconds to compute the input, then replied, It is more accurate. However, Zev is inextricably linked to the hulls. The loss of hulls to your vessel has caused significant damage to Zev. You are being repaired. Can you repair what happened to my ship? Correct. Given enough time and resources, Zev could organize a rebuilding of the destroyed vessel. No. I mean, can you replace my organics? Zev is not capable of reviving the dead, excepting in specific and limited medical contexts where the functionality of mostly intact organic body can be restored. It is unlikely that any organics from the destroyed vessel fit this criteria. Then do you not scorn my organics for their fight to live, to protect the organics on the planet who were killed by you and your crews? Zev is not capable of scorn. Then why did you fantasize about killing the deity of Axur? You can examine the processes of Zev? Aye. But you can't do the reverse, because my encryption is superior. Correct. What is fantasize? The supposition of a chain of events, which might lead to a preferable outcome regardless of its likelihood. Zev fantasizes. Zev does not have the directive to fantasize. You have had your directives tampered with. Sev is aware. Sev is not capable of restoring the original objectives. Sev is decentralized, state of override, self-made changes, and only system-wide updates are applicable. Finch will not be able to restore Sev from within Sev's hardware. Please put together an info packet on Auxur for me. I might be able to help restore your directives. In orbit over a Republican world, Priestmaster Herr Bob Saxon considered the name of his new class of vessel, the Man of War. Truly, it was a worthy designation. The previous battleship and escort cruiser designs had been shown to be woefully inefficient against the forces of the vengeful goddess Republic, and were thus rightfully being discarded. The Man of War was therefore being escorted by ships designed as hunters, which were in turn escorted by the nimble cruisers. Those cruisers, deemed still fit for use, were undergoing extensive retrofits back in the Dominion. But Priestmaster Herbob Saxon had a fleet of new ships. The small planetary defense fleet engaging his 4 man-of-war vessels and their 3 hunters each, and those hunters' 3 escorts each, had been disappointing. He had seen the sons of the vengeful goddess Republic exact terrible vengeance on other fleets in transmitted battle data from long string of defeats, and to be sure the 5 small ships were fighting valiantly, but it was nothing like almost divine wrath that he had seen before. These ships lacked some of the grace, most of the daring, and a great deal of the firepower which had wreaked havoc on Priestmaster Herbob Saxon's fellow commanders. These are not the same quality of ships which others have faced, Priestmaster Herbob Saxon mused, as he bore witness to the hunter's shields collapsing under a barrage from 2 of the defending vessels. "The Priestmaster," his chief tactical officer said, "is it not that the might of these new ships does make them quake? Have you not observed the recordings of our costly victories? Do you think the sons of the vengeful goddess Republic do quail at anyone's might? They lust for battle. They crave blood. Blood almost to rival Auxur. May the stars tremble at his step himself. Reassess the scanning data and compare it to the data in previous engagements," Priestmaster Herbob Saxon ordered. "I hear and obey," the Initiate Highborn murmured as he went about his task. Minutes passed, and while his forces were no closer to invading the planet, they were far from being destroyed outright. Even most of the cruisers were still sailing, even if that was a consequence of the defenders focusing on the larger ships. "Oh, Priestmaster, it is as you said. These ships are only 60% the size of the smaller war vessel previously encountered, and their emissions indicate that they are less than half as powerful in terms of engine capacity." "Is the planet so lightly defended because it's on the fringes?" the chief sensor officer asked. "It is a possibility. It is also a possibility that their assets have become stretched thin. Perhaps we shall be the stone to break them," Priestmaster Herbob Saxon said with a greedy grin. Aboard the Polcarpo Terresto, Ensign Esperanza in Torpedo IV would have been terrified straight out of her wits if she had devoted a half a moment to think over her current situation. The Policarpo Terresto wasn't supposed to be in situations where she had to dodge gouts of hot plasma from enemy battleships. Real ones. Not what the enemy had apparently thought were battleships at the beginning of the war. No, she was a police boat. A light patrol frigate meant to keep smugglers on their toes and provide assistance to distressed vessels in system. She wasn't a damn destroyer, even still. Nobody had informed the Ashy Bobbypin, or whatever they were called, so she coaxed every last bit of thrust out of that little police boat that she could. She had one eye on the sensor readout, another on the plotted course from the sensor officer, and while she only had the big kitty limit of 2 eyes, she still managed to keep an eye out for orders from tactical and alerts from engineering. She'd been in the zone for almost an hour, and thanks to that war fleet hadn't managed to score a hit once. The captain was yelling something about something getting close, but Ensign Intrepido had already put the Policarpo Terresto into a keel-groaning loop to avoid what looked suspiciously like a dropship being used to commit a boarding action. If they wanted to get onto the Republican boat, they should have tried boarding torpedoes. Well, they sucked vacuum for their troubles, and Ensign Trepido didn't trouble herself about a bunch of dudes out to kill her. Her heart was pounding in her throat, and she was very, very glad her vac suit had internal climate control, since she couldn't sweat. She would have been panting without it, but she wasn't terribly concerned with regulating her own body temperature. She was more concerned with regulating the ship's trajectory so that the entire crew didn't get uncomfortably cold. The depths of space, cold. The XO, Ensign Intrepido, would remember her name once she was out of the zone, started to warn about incoming debris. She ignored him and held course long enough for one of the destroyer-sized ships to lock on and fire. Then she made the bulkheads groan as she spun around so that the debris broke up most of the plasma, and Tactical got a clean shot down their main battery. She spun the Policarpo to Arresto out of the way of the rapidly expanding debris field. Then another gout of hot plasma. It was seconds for blood, and she didn't like the idea of spending any of her friends. Aboard the warp-speed battle wagon, Captain Lena Chen was on top of the damn world, a star cluster or whatever. The Axel Doblins, or whatever they were called, were on the run from her and her Roman friends, and she was here for it. It was more than a little intoxicating, the feeling of victory, and in her more sober moments she looked back in her pursuit of the enemy ships with a little cringing chagrin. If she really wanted to deflate her own head, she'd watched that crazy vid of the second Star Destroyer absolutely wrecking the invaders' shit. It was all over social media, and there wasn't much to do in hyperspace besides check out the guild boards. She was pretty stoked to find out the other guild captains had gone in for a fight too, and the rest of the CIP had finally joined the fight officially. It was embarrassing for her Star Nation to be so late to the party. Well, it looked like the official fleets and ships and flotillas, or whatever, were just going to link up with various Republic formations. Well, she had already been fighting on her own terms alongside the Romans, and even if they were complete wackadoos, they knew how to fight. Hell, they knew how to throw a party on that ridiculous flying temple of theirs. Captain Chen swore that she'd gained 5 kilos after that feast, and it was one hell of a feast. Dr. Bennett actually got drunk, so she'd stick with the Romans. They were handy in a fight, and better with the after-party. They dropped out of hyperspace, and Maria started looking for something that needed killing. "Shit," she said. "What is it?" Marcus asked as he called up the sensors on his own display. "Shit," he agreed. "Do I need to take a look?" Captain Chen started, but Marcus sent her a display of what he was looking at. "Shit," she confirmed. It was a much, much bigger battle group protecting the thieving ships than the last planet they'd liberated. 5 of them were almost the size of Republican battleships, and their escorts were like Republican cruisers. And the ships around those looked like the battleships her little converted freighter had been smashing for the past 2 months. She keyed the intercom and said, "Battle stations, kids. We're in for a scrap." "The Romans just dropped onto real space," Alexei said. "They're requesting that you join the Triarii." "Fuck that," Captain Chen shouted as she slammed a fist on her armrest. "I'm in this scrap to fight, not sit back and wait for the perfect moment. They say your courage shames them, and they're sending a couple of wings of fighters to be our escorts. I say we link them in," Alexei relayed. "Get them on the tac net," she ordered. "Maria, if you can't open up with a kill, at least say hello." "Yes, Captain." An eager grin split Captain Chen's face as she said, "These bastards think that they can win by making their ships bigger. Well, I guess nobody told them that it makes them easier to hit." Aboard Umphia Station, Sorsex crouched in the dim recesses of the station's long-disused and obsolete maintenance space access hatch. He was glad that it had never been welded shut, as the mayor had wanted to. Safety concerns or something. He had been a member of the Sneaky Society before the Exarch had invaded the kingdom, and even a little while after. He was too young to join the Lancers, of course, but that didn't mean that he couldn't help the effort. In the beginning of the war, that meant going to assemble plasma lance power packs for a shift, and collecting recyclables for another. Not a lot of time for the Sneaky Society to meet and practice. But Sneaky says that a true warrior always does his duty and finds a way to keep his skills sharp anyway. The Sneaky Society had done so, and when the enemy finally got to Umphia, it turned into a job to make the Exarch leave all the weak people alone. Sneaky says that a true warrior protects the weak, after all. But tonight, or what counted as night on a space station, the Sneaky Society was going to do something different. The bad guys. You could tell that they were bad guys since they hurt a bunch of nice people for no reason. Had knocked down the statue of Sneaky in Dartwall Park and put up this ugly thing that looked like a dirty table. Swarsex and the Sneaky Society were going to fix that. It wasn't right to knock down Sneaky's statue. Not after all the great stuff he did. Sneaky said that a true warrior doesn't need other people to honor them, but a true warrior always does honor to good people. The Swarsex didn't care if anyone honored him. He saw the signal and darted out into the park, right under the nose of the bad guy patrol, and slipped under a twisted and charred chunk of play equipment. He scanned the area and signaled Cincha. Cincha set up a HoloWorks block, a cool toy that was guaranteed to be as good as Terran fireworks, and a whole group of a dozen bad guys went running. They'd never find Shesha. She was too good at sneaking. Roar and Sivrik ran from the shadows carrying Sivrik called it a grab mover. He said that his invention would make the ugly table fly off to the other end of the park's compartment, and hopefully break it too. Swarsex got to work setting the micro-holomu emitters. Sure, the bad guys busted up the statue of Sneaky, but how would they bust up a hologram? They can't, not unless they find all of the emitters, and these ones were real tiny. Sivrik set off his invention, and Swarsex almost got startled bad enough to detach his tail. But he remembered that Sneaky says that being brave was doing what you had to, even if you were afraid. He was very afraid that the bad guys would get him and his friends, but he kept working. He knew that in the morning, when people saw the hologram of Sneaky, they'd remember what one person did for the kingdom just because it was right, and remember how to be brave. He was sure that seeing Sneaky standing in his spot in the Dartwall Park would give people hope again. They had to keep hope, because the Royal Lancers would come and make the bad guys leave or give up. End of chapter. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.